morning. I'm Anne Marie Johnson with Ardent. I have the pleasure of being the chair of the Federal Insight Exchange Program, and I would like to welcome all of you for participating in today's joint event. The Federal Insight Exchange Program is a program that focuses on short, substantive conversations between government and industry that drive mission outcomes. We thrive when we work with our communities of interest. This is an event that you can see includes two other communities of interest. With that, I'd like to pass the baton over to Tom.
Well, thanks, Anne Marie. This is Tom Cuneo. I'm the industry chair for the Networks and Telecommunications Community of Interest. We appreciate all of the attendees today, and we appreciate all of the things that ACT-IAC allows us to do. Appreciate all of the great volunteers. I want to just do a quick shout out to Pete Tseronis, Deidre Murray, and J.D. Henley of Networks and Telecommunications. They're our program chairs. And again, welcome. I'm going to turn it over to Todd Hager if he's on the line. And if not, I'll give him a minute. And if he's not on, I'll come back on. So Todd, are you in the crowd?
I am. Thank you, Tom. My name is Todd Hager. I'm the industry chair for the Emerging Technology Community of Interest, and we're thrilled to participate in this event today. So thank you, Tom.
Well, thanks, Todd. I'm glad you can make it. We're really trying hard at ACT-IAC to bring groups together. This is great that we've got Emerging Technology, Networks and Telecom, and the Federal Insights Exchange. So it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator today. And Pete Tseronis is a good friend. I remember when he was at Education talking about something called VoIP. So we're all going, oh, that'll never work. We use PBXs. And then I remember at Energy, and probably most of you don't realize, Pete was the first chief technical officer of the Department of Energy. And with that, Pete, welcome. And we appreciate you moderating today.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you to ACT-IAC, Anne Marie. It was great chatting football before we started. Anne Marie's a big Steeler fan, for those of you listening. And Alex does like the Caps. He's from Boston and doesn't like the Patriots. So that's awesome. Deirdre Murray, Nancy Delanoche, everybody, I'm excited. And we're going to have an awesome conversation today. For those of you tuning in and listening in, you probably maybe know Alex Cohen. Alex comes to us by way of an incredible journey through government. I've known Alex for years. This was a no-brainer to feature his inventiveness, his creativity, and his operational and technical expertise. Our goal today is that you understand a bit more about the person, the role, of course, and then going forward, how you, whether you're an industry or in government, can take advantage of the opportunities to collaborate with the GSA in the role that he's in. He is the Director for Emerging Technologies within the Office of Government-Wide Policy, which in a lot of the preparation we talked about can sound a bit mundane, policy. But what you're going to hear today, and one of the tweets that I already took away from Alex yesterday, was that his goal is to respond to, adopt, and bring in new technologies, and where policy needs to be informed or reformed. That's what they're trying to engender in that group. So we're going to keep this fireside chat. I could brag about Alex here in a minute, which I will. And again, for those of you who don't know the wackadoodle Pete, but I worked in government for 25 years. My job is to just connect a few dots, build some bridges, and hopefully shed some light and enlightenment through an informative educational dialogue. We like to tell stories here at ACT-IAC. And, I had a great journey in time, and I miss this community. So this is an opportunity to give back, and I appreciate that opportunity. So, Alex, let me brag about you for a minute. He looks like he's 25, and he probably is 30, maybe. And he has a dry sense of humor, so you'll probably sense some of that. But this guy is pure passion. Yes, he's at GSA. Before this, he was at the Census Bureau doing amazing things with the Innovation Lab, the Center for Applied Technology, that is. And before that, I did get to work with Alex a bit at the Department of Energy, where he led efforts across the energy efficiency mission, across the chief learning officer space, and then in public affairs. He's an engineer. He's got a master's degree, or I should say a computer science degree, Bachelor of Science from University of Massachusetts Amherst, maintains a Master of Science in Public Policy from George Mason, incredible dad and husband, and he's got kids, and his background is very unique. He's in a role now where he's an executive director with vision, and he's also a guy that can cut his teeth and do that technical software engineering, cloud technology, AI, which are some of those expertise domains when he needs to apply it. So that's a special person, and I think that's why this role and this job that he has within the GSA is so important. Right before we started, Alex emphasized forward thinking, not being reactive. We in government are always pushing the envelope with policy and mandate, but making it actionable takes folks who are going to say, I will cat herd, I will lead the way, and I want to have metrics that aren't just scorecards, but use cases that we could say the pendulum is actually moving. So we're going to get going. Alex, that's the best I could do, man. Why don't you tell the folks a little bit more about you and some of that passion that you exude every day of the week and twice on Sunday?
Well, hey, Pete, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you inviting me to be here today. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about our brand new office. So the Office of Emerging Tech was stood up, as you mentioned, to get away from kind of reactionary policy. Hey, something else has come out, we have to deal with it, and to really be taking the stance of what should we be thinking about in the government in order to move the government forward. As someone who used to run an innovation program, we did probably 1,000 projects over 5 years, saved about $100 million by creating new prototypes and proofs of concept, developing new practices. The technology isn't really the hard part, right? Building code, making things work. I mean, it can be challenging and tricky, but really in government, policy is just as much a challenge as the technology is. And so being in this position, I'm very excited at being able to look kind of forward. And the stance we're taking is if we can clear those policy roadblocks out for all the practitioners doing technology across government, that's a big win for the US government. So, instead of being the innovation shop for one agency, we kind of view ourselves as the innovation shop to help all agencies be able to better adopt and bring in new technology into government and to be able to work with it. So I'm very excited to be here.
Well, thank you for that. And I think it's important given that intro. I mean, I'm actually excited. We joked earlier about going out to find out more about the mission of the office, and I know more is to come. And for the group today, we're going to be sharing a one-pager that really kind of details what it is this office is, and it can be and will be, and think of it like an illustrative roadmap of the future. So that will be coming your way. Alex, can we go back though, just very high level to sort of, if you can just tee it up, this office. People think of OGP as, okay, it's an arm of the OMB, and it's sort of a nexus for people can go there for distillation on what does this policy mean to me? And that's an important role, obviously. But this is, to me, sounding a lot like, wow, if I have an idea about some tech I want to invest in or maybe build or buy, is that something that folks can go to your office and talk to you about?
Sure. So let's talk about it. So we're housed within OGP, Government-Wide Policies, Office of Information Integrity and Access. So basically within the IT space of OGP. And our goal is, if there are agencies that are out there that are struggling with policy issues, they should absolutely come to us. We've done that already with a number of them, where they've said, hey, we've got an issue with X, Y, or Z policy. For example, HHS approached us saying there was an issue with COI data and working with small hospitals. And so we were working with them in the past, trying to figure out how we might be able to address that. Some of the other ones that we've done is we've worked with the AI community of practice around the credentialing of artificial intelligence on federal networks. So that was actually about to come out as a GSA playbook, where the community is saying, okay, we're building these AIs, but how do we get them on the federal network? Like, what is the practice of doing so? And so we created a playbook that goes everything from assessing the risk of those individual AIs and providing criteria to do so, to guidance at the identity management system level within the agency of what fields need to be added to kind of support these kind of proliferation of AI that we're seeing across government. So that's, and it's again being forward thinking. So for example, we recommended that IP address be maintained in those things. Right? In humans, there's no IP address, but if you're starting to add bots to the identity management system, we should just have things like IP address, so we know, if an AI starts behaving incorrectly or accessing systems it probably shouldn't, we can actually track that. That's something we're not doing today, but something we could be doing in the future. And that kind of forward-thinking approach is kind of where we want to be as an office. In terms of emerging technology, we've identified kind of 3 buckets. The first is new to government. This is stuff that everyone else in the world has, and the government has not yet been able to adopt or bring in. So it's emerging to us. Then we identify the stuff, industry is moving in one direction. So this is, and I'm not going to name names for obvious reasons, but technology A is becoming the dominant player in the market space, and the government needs to react to that appropriately. And then finally, the stuff that's 10, 15 years out, but will have a major disruption on government. One of those, for example, that we're thinking about is quantum encryption, ensuring the government is quantum secure, and kind of how do we deal with that. So we've kind of got that range, and we're taking a holistic approach to these policies. So really nothing is off the table in terms of how we get the policy out. It could be a playbook, it could be a blog post, it could be working with OMB to get it out as guidance to all agencies. Whatever it takes to kind of move the government forward is the approach we're taking.
So first of all, thank you. I was writing down a lot and triangulating so much about this forward thinking and planning. So you brought up a couple of use cases, and those of you listening who might be chatting and wanting to ask a question, we may use or fall into buzzword bingo. So Alex, I heard you say with HHS, the COI data, I'm going to assume that's controlled unclassified information.
That's okay. Correct. So they approached us about, sorry. Yep, absolutely. No, I'll try and avoid the TLAs while I'm speaking today.
No, I'll catch you on it, man. Just be prepared to explain the acronym. You know what I mean?
I appreciate it.
It's all good. Okay. So let me, let me go back to this holistic approach. So what I just heard, which is awfully cool, is so here's a policy shop that has a dynamic, continuously learning roadmap. You mentioned in that third part about a 10 to 15 years out. How engaged are you with industry, and how are you engaging industry, if you will, to bring in that vision? Because it's not just the government's, view in the 1, 3, 5, 10-year range. How do you collaborate with industry to kind of look at the future?
So that's a great question. So we're about 9 months into our existence. We're a relatively new shop. We are just kind of building out our surveillance capability on new technologies. Right now, we're doing that through, we have a taxonomy of the IT space, so everything from application development to help desk to cloud. And we've identified sources that cover the news, so blog news sources, academic journals, and the team individually goes through and reads those journals, and we've assigned it broken up across the team, and we keep up to date with both the academic literature and kind of the industry news. In addition, we're starting to think about how we want to engage more effectively with industry. We don't buy anything. We're not in the acquisition side of that GSA, so there's no procurement actions that's going to happen, but we're absolutely taking a look out there and seeing how we can best be aware of kind of what are those emerging techs that are out there. We've certainly met with companies in the past when they have something unique to offer, although right now we've been more kind of us going out looking rather than asking anyone to come in and explicitly brief us.
So let me follow up to that, which I appreciate. And forgive me, I know you're new and you're getting this, but it's a nice plan. And I think folks listening in, if you're in industry, what an art of the possible to engage with an office that's trying to vision. And it's not about the buy sell. It's about we're seeking and who are the solvers. I like to call that the seeker solver paradigm. Alex, let's just fast forward though. Do you think there's a time where you will be having a recurring or potentially regular protocol for this taxonomy and surveillance, because tech's changing all the time, right? And as many blog posts you review and with the social media, can you give us a little taste of what you might have a vision for in the year from now of how engagement will be so that you can, ideate with industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, we're just starting to look into this approach. We are thinking of hosting, and I don't want to use a term that's going to get me in trouble, some sort of roundtable or industry meeting, like once a quarter or something like that, with kind of different sectors. So, and this is kind of pre-decisional because we're not saying we're going to do this or not. And we have run this general council, so all those things need to happen first. But I think where I would like to go is, like a quarterly meeting, one quarter it's, all the kind of DC contracting companies that are in the area, and ask them, really we have two questions. What technology should the government be paying attention to that we are not currently paying attention to? And what policy burdens are you facing bringing your technology into government? Those are the questions that I answered. Right?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Pete.
No, I was just saying I wasn't trying to get you into that spot. I just say I think the idea of open government, participatory, transparent, collaborative. It's great that there's going to be potentially something actionable to the vision, because that's what it takes, right? Today is as much about the government might have an idea, but industry informs. You mentioned what can be new to govern, what's emerging. It might already be common practice in private sector, and I think. Facts tell, stories sell, right? And why not learn from some tried and true practices? Who knows? Maybe it can inform a policy. So thank you for that. All right, let's cut back to Alex's journey a bit here. So the Center for Applied Technology, how did that come about, and what was your vision, and really what was those early challenges that led to the success while you were over there at the Census Bureau?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I took it over, it was more or less nothing was really going on there. There was some staff. It had existed. It had some leadership. The leader had left to another position. No one had kind of managed it for about a year. When I took over, I think there were like 3 projects going on. By the time I left, I think we had about 26 concurrent projects at any given day. And like I said, we were doing about 120 to 240, 160 projects per year. In that lab space, and it was a challenge, right? We were created, I think, to experiment with new technology, find ways to do better, to bring in technology into it was at the U.S. Census Bureau, to bring that technology in faster and easier, and to fail early. The Census Bureau had come off of a 2010 IT challenge that hadn't quite gone as well as they had liked. They'd spent about $960 million on something that didn't end up working in 2010. And they said, okay, we never want that to happen again. And so they created this Center for Applied Technology as a way to fail early, basically try things out. And if they work, great. And if they don't, then it's minimal effort was expended in testing out things. And so that's what we were created to do. We were given an air-gapped network, basically separate from the rest of the Census Bureau's infrastructure, where we were able to stand up technology, try it out, build proofs of concept and prototypes. And a large part of it was getting leadership buy-in, right? So one of the recent projects that I did just before I left, and this is one of my favorite stories. We had someone come in and say, hey, the solution that was being offered to enumerate transient populations, which is homeless populations, or those that maybe in mobile homes or with no fixed address. The solution was from her perspective, kind of clunky. Required a dedicated enumerator and a dedicated laptop in order to run it. We ended up building a mobile app, and by we had a person on detail who had been contract manager for SAS, the software, statistical company, statistical software. She'd been managing that for like 15 years. She hadn't been a developer for probably 20, 25 years, about to retire. She came in, learned iOS development off YouTube and the internet, built a mobile app that ended up saving something like $17 million for the Bureau, or at least was projected to. We're replacing the need for that dedicated laptop and dedicated enumerator. And again, she learned this on her own, demonstrated it, extremely simple app that could be put on the phones that were already going to be issued, and it ended up being tested. I left before it was finally deployed, but when I left, it was going to be deployed and save $17 million for 2020 operations. And this was someone who just had an idea. And that's something that I do want to say. The federal workforce is incredibly innovative and incredibly creative in terms of trying to find new approaches and to do their jobs better. And, I was really in a unique position where I could kind of help people bring their visions to life. And I think that's what I really enjoyed about my last job, was just helping people who, have an idea of how to do something better to really bring it and make it a reality.
Yeah, well, I agree on all fronts about the government being innovative. I think when you leave the Beltway and people ask the question, all of us inside the Beltway have an opportunity to say, you may see and hear a lot about what goes on in the wonderful world of the Beltway bubble, but there's some amazing work that I think we need to do more of and tell those stories. Alex, I think, well, for folks, this Center for Applied Technology, it supported hundreds of innovation projects per year across the entire IT spectrum: cloud, AI, infrastructure, data storage, software development. Received the gold medal, highest award from Secretary Pritzker for work on making the Bureau data more accessible. And, Alex, we got to keep pivoting here, because what you just said was amazing. And that is, folks who were part of this innovation or center, it actually probably afforded them the opportunity to tap into some of that creativity. And in a world where the government is very transactional and operational and keep the lights on, what an amazing nexus for folks to go and say, I might have skills that allow me to become a better code developer, or one in general. So can you talk a little bit about, are there other, how did you build that center out? And would you like to see more of that in government? Are there use cases like that?
I absolutely would love to see more of them in government. So we had a minimal cost. Besides the physical room and 20 computers, I think our cloud budget was something like 30 grand a year or 40 grand a year, and that provided all the cloud infrastructure we needed, servers and so on. Our hardware budget was like 20 grand a year, so minimal costs. The vast majority of the work was done by folks coming into work in the space. So we had, on my staff, we had contractors who had, data science backgrounds or software development backgrounds or mobile backgrounds, or project management backgrounds, and they would support these people coming in. We worked in tandem with them. So someone would come in, spend a couple of weeks down in the lab trying something out. So minimal cost and just a huge ROI in terms of impact. So I will say that there's a number of other innovation programs across government. They all tend to use different models. Some of them are kind of more, you apply for the program and it's reviewed by the executives and then a decision is made. That's kind of a more traditional one. Ours had an open door policy. Literally anyone could walk in from the Census Bureau with any idea they had to improve the operations of the Bureau, and we would work with them to move their idea forward. Some ideas were great, some ideas not so great.
But voices were heard. People could go somewhere. That's wonderful.
That's exactly right. Voices were heard, and we could try it out. And you know what? It may be something, it may not be something. I will say one thing that was impressive is that we had a very high number of return people. So if you came in once, if we got you through the door one time, you tended to come back over and over again. And so that was one thing. Our biggest challenge was getting people in the door the first time.
That's great. That's great. So Alex, let's pivot back. That obviously, and again, for those of you, go read about it, the Center for Applied Technology, leaving a mark and building off of that. Alex, I keep thinking that what an opportunity as Director of Emerging Technologies to take those experiences. So again, I'm going to keep playing off. I know your office is young and you've got grand plans, but let's look back to, you've been there for a bit. What's your favorite part about working at the GSA personally so far?
So I love it. And then, like I said, at Census, my job was to kind of one project at a time. My hope here at GSA is to really make this help everyone, all the practitioners who are out there building AI, trying to bring in new projects, because they're all over government. Every day you run into someone who's trying to do something new at their agency. Blockchain at, I think was HHS is has a pilot on blockchain, right? There's just tons of great stuff all across the government. And being the one who can be out there and kind of, clear roadblocks out of the way in terms of clear those policies or update old policies or get new guidance out there to really help everyone at one time. That's really something I'm really treasuring over at GSA. I enjoy being at GSA, great culture, great people, as I generally find across government. But really, I'm excited to being able to help everyone kind of en masse by kind of helping them with the policy side of the house. right?
That's a culture is the word that I keep hearing, that we all know in any business, sports, you hear about culture, and why some organizations, agencies have it and others are working at it constantly. And I think that what a catch for GSA to bring you in and do what you do so well. And Dan Pomeroy and your leadership, of course. What would you say, Alex, have been some of those challenges, right? Not negative, but starting a new team and recruiting and with transitions and new elections. Are there some things that you're learning that maybe you didn't have to worry about before, but now you're in this position of building a culture? What are some of those challenges?
I mean, I think it's the basics. It's we had no procedures in place for a lot of this stuff. Like, how do we keep abreast of all of technology across the IT space, right? What does that look like? And so we've been using a very agile approach, and I mean that kind of with a small a agile in terms of, so for example, we started using Trello for, originally when we started, we were just kind of writing documents and they were getting lost. Like, oh, who has, the latest copy of that? Where is that? We had folders and stuff, but it wasn't quite working out as well. My deputy recommended we start using Trello which was a GSA approved tool. So great, we switched to Trello. We set it up one way, we've modified it, and every couple of months we probably make another change to how exactly we use it. We recently added a tag for comms review complete, right? And it's these kind of minor but iterative improvements that kind of have allowed us to really kind of excel, I think, in terms of, we're constantly open to suggestions and change from within the team. So someone says, hey, you know what? We need to add an extra column here because, after I do this, then it should be this. For example, we just started we have about 50 items on our Trello to-do list. So any idea from the teams that we're allowed to contribute, I kind of took that from the CAT, the Center for Applied Technology approach, of kind of anyone can throw their idea on the board. Doesn't mean we're going to do it or it's even a good idea, but at least we note it. And then we've started using kind of an agile, ranking it by government impact and ease of completion. Is sort of to prioritize that list. So that's something we just started doing a few weeks ago to kind of put a concrete effort in place, figure out exactly how we prioritize our work. So it's that kind of iterative build out of organizational practices, and to be expected in kind of any new shop. But I think that's probably been a good and probably the biggest challenge, just how do we get organized? How do we improve? And just having a willingness to constantly kind of change and adjust has been pretty powerful.
Yeah, no. I love that example of the documentation and constant. I call it just this dynamic. There's always an opportunity to change or improve. So let's go back to, you mentioned the word playbook, and again, whether it's down the road or something. I'm seeing, is this a playbook of playbooks? Say for, hey, if you're thinking AI, if you're thinking cyber, if you're thinking workforce development, because I'm sort of hearing like you're almost maybe a place that can be, here's a best practice for, and interpret it for your agency because everybody has kind of different guidelines and mission. Talk a bit about this playbook concept.
So to be clear, this is not a particularly special, it's not a playbook of playbooks. It's a pretty straightforward playbook, literally outline. So we got funding from the Federal CIO Council last year to put together, to do research on how to credential AIs on federal networks. We briefed the CIO Executive Committee. They were pleased with the work, and from there we were instructed to turn it into a playbook on this topic. What was interesting is, we were a little concerned because we're coming out and saying, if you're building an AI, you must do these things, and laid out a bunch of extra things for people to do. And we were a little concerned the community would be unhappy. But actually, the reaction from the community has been the opposite. They've been thrilled, saying, great, someone has guidance on how to do this. This is what we must do, great. And so we've actually received very positive reviews from the RPA and API community, the robotic process automation and the API communities of practice. So, sorry, I'll try and avoid
hey, you did it instinctively, but that was a good segue. No, that's good. I mean, I think, again, anytime you hear opportunities to say, or collect, right? Like a best practice, what works for GSA, in this case with Trello, might be something that you socialize that other agencies are having that problem. I think we all know that intentional or not, we have cylinders of excellence in government. And industry, I think a lot of the time is, who do I need to speak to about this, that, or the other? And maybe, Alex, this is a good segue to, I consider you an influencer. I always think that we in government have, or when I was in government, titles are one thing, roles another. And when you market to a role and the mission, whether it was when I was in running, as Tom Cuneo pointed out, the data center and worried about voice over IP, I wasn't always the person that was going to be the one that one would want to have a transaction with, but I could be an ambassador. I could be a person of interest. Do you find that you've been in roles like that, and how much do you value that influential individuals as you build a crop or coach and mentor the next generation? Because I don't think it's about titles when it comes to marketing products and solutions. I think it's about who supports the leaders like yourself. Can you comment on just that role of mentoring?
Well, so I'll certainly start by saying, my boss, Dan Pomeroy, you mentioned him earlier, is fantastic, right?
Yep.
He's making, and I think that anyone kind of in the role that I'm in, having that air cover of someone who will keep you out of trouble is incredibly valuable. And, kudos to Dan for creating this new program on emerging tech. And previously, when I was at Census, thank you to Avi Bender, who created the Center for Applied Technology. So
Yep.
both of these guys, they deserve the credit, right? I'm the worker bee. They're the ones who have the vision to create the organizations. I will say that, I tend to use the Godfather approach. I'll do you a favor if you do me a favor kind of thing, where I may call upon you for a favor later on. In government, I think that works well, right? Go out of your way to help people in government, because you never know when you're going to need to rely on them to help you. And I think that is something I would urge everyone to do, right? Try and be as helpful as possible, even if it may not be kind of in your normal mission. If there's someone who's asking you for help, go out of your way to help them. You never know when you may need them. And, that's just something I generally rely on in my leadership, is always trying to be as helpful and productive as possible to as many people as possible.
Yeah, no, great points. And I was you beat me to the punch on Avi Bender, a great guy, and still doing great things. I had a chance to have some coffee with him. And Alex, just for the record, you're one of those people that I'm saying, I think you now have an opportunity to shape and mold and create more influencers. We need more of them in industry. I'm just going to throw it out there. Recognize the influencers, the Avis, the Alexes, great people, great leaders. They're folks that I think, Alex, you're nodding, support you on a day-to-day basis. And I know Dan Pomeroy is very, very excited to have you as well. So kudos to your role in shaping our next generation. All right. So Alex, now it's kind of you got to put on your vision hat when you're sitting at home and after you're being an awesome dad and husband and maybe doing whatever it is you like to do. And then you're thinking about the future. What are some of the technologies or use cases that you're excited about? Where do you see the world a year from now, or 2 or 3? But what is some of the tech that you're excited about personally?
Well, I think there's a huge range of that. I don't think there's a lack of it. So quantum encryption is one that I'm big on right now.
Why is that? Why is that?
Sure. So what we've seen, and I don't know how familiar you are with quantum computers, based on the way that they operate, they are significantly faster. And then that's an absolute simplification of the issue, but just go with significantly faster. Right now, the most powerful one that I think we're aware of is Honeywell, I think, built a 100-bit one. At the 1,000-bit one, a lot of our modern encryption that we use to keep our computers safe starts to break down. So this is stuff that for digital signatures, for SSH, for HTTPS traffic, all of those start to be unlocked as these computers get big enough. And they're increasing quickly, right? A few years ago, it was 64 bits. Now it's 100 bits. At 1,000 bits, a lot of our stuff is unlockable. So anyone who has one of these things can basically see the internet traffic you're sending, can unencrypt and access your servers, and kind of really do a lot of damage very quickly. And so the government needs to start this is, again, my perspective, this is not policy from GSA or anything, but we need to start taking a look at how we secure the government infrastructure from these futuristic threats. So even though it's probably about 7 years away before these computers are online and big enough, the government needs to start thinking today. So I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited, obviously, about AI, although whether that's emerging or not at this point, it's almost become commoditized. It's just all over the place. But kind of figuring out how we organize around it and what we do with it, I think is going to be the next big steps. We're starting some stuff on IoT. We recently wrote a report that was sent to Congress, and we work with OMB, NIST, and a number of other agencies. That was on IoT procurement, and our team wrote that report, and it was just transmitted to Congress. So we're very excited about kind of that sort of stuff as well. So I don't think there's a lack of technologies. I think what I'm excited about really is kind of this forward-thinking approach, right? Is that how do we get policies out there that are really addressing the problems of tomorrow rather than reacting to the problems of today? My personal dream is something like policy patch notes. I would love to see, technology changes so fast that we really need to get out guidance quickly. And so I would love it someday for there to be a document that comes out and says, the following policies, cloud service provider now means this, or, this now means this kind of thing. And just have like little short pithy lines that kind of give guidance around policy changes. And just get the government to a state where that's where we are, and that we update our policies quickly and routinely as part of our practice. So that's where I want to go. That's far out, and that's my personal vision for kind of government-wide policy in terms of emerging tech.
Yeah, and obviously there'll be some tech that underpins that. I love policy patch notes. I mean, and the quantum. Hey, shout out to ELC Executive Leadership Conference. If you're planning to attend, we're going to have a great panel on the quantum internet with Carl Williams and Barb Helland, and some folks from Oak Ridge National Lab, Travis Humble, and from the Pittsburgh Quantum Institute. And for the record, Alex, I'm a huge fan of quantum computing, obviously coming from DOE, but you did an incredible job there saying it's just really fast. And in addition to being obviously something that can protect our data with great encryption. Alex, something that hit me when you were talking, and that is this dispelling myths of technology, right? Dispelling the myth. And, can you talk a bit about when you have those cases where somebody's trying to not influence, but talk to you about, the promise of a technology, but sometimes you have to bring that individual or that company to, well, all right, I know it has this potentiality, but do you find that you ask a lot of questions, and I don't want to say this inappropriately, but there's a way I like to say, call BS on what somebody says that the capability is. Do you inquire a lot? Do you do a lot of your own homework? What do you rely on as not gospel, but that's what I need to make my light bulb go off and dispel the myth or understand that a technology has some future capability that you weren't aware of? How do you do that?
I love reading. So I generally like going out and doing my own research ahead of time, right? Like if I'm going to talk to someone, I want to find anything I can about them in terms of what their technology works and how it works is the thing. Anyone who says to me, that's the magic or that's the secret sauce, immediately, my old boss, Michelle, you mentioned her, used to notice that when my eyebrow would start to cock, she's like, oh, okay, we got a problem here. And so, anyone who kind of claims it's the magic, recipe here, like, okay, yeah, that's great. Tell me how it actually works. Like, what exactly is this? At the end of the day, a lot of stuff doesn't really change. It's mostly applied math under the hood. And so if you're willing to get down into the applied math level, like, okay, exactly what are you doing here and how exactly is this working? That really is where you start to get kind of the truth of whether this technology is kind of unique or not. There are things obviously around ease of use. Some technology may just be really valuable because it makes the job much, much easier to do. And that becomes a dominant player in the market space. But being able to get under the hood with the technology, I'm not talking about like a code level review, but tell me really, how is it doing this? How does it work? I think really matters. And again, the ease of use is the other piece of that, right? I've seen a lot of technologies that have shown up at the doorstep saying, we have this absolutely amazing thing, and then you get into it and it's just so incredibly complicated to use and deploy that you're like, yeah, that's great, but it's never gonna be useful for government or anyone because it's too complicated to get operational.
Okay, so I think note to industry: if you see the eyebrow on Alex, then you need better pivot quick, right? Is that what we're hearing? Yeah. Okay, so Alex, you mentioned a word which I hold supreme: preparation. You said you do research. If you do have a meeting planned with industry, and I think this is an opportunity for at least the Alex Cohen, not GSA, like what you value in industry. Coming to have that meeting with you, right? Meetings are important in this world today. It's a virtual meeting, but can you just, because you're a Fed and you can emphasize that while you're as collaborative as they come, what is your expectation when you talk about preparation? Can you expound a little bit on Is it prepare for, know what the OGP is, what GSA is, who Alex Cohen is, what I care about? That's important, I think, to make that time that you have valuable on both sides. Can you talk about the preparation you put in and what your expectations are?
Sure. So again, I'm not in the acquisition side of the house, so this is purely my personal opinion. A lot of times vendors show up not trying to sell me something when I'm not going to buy anything, right? I'm not in a buying position, right? The contracts for my office may already be in place. I'm not looking to acquire anything. I may be looking to know more about your product for the future state, but a lot of times people come with an expectation that the government can just open up the purse and buy the thing. And that's really not how acquisitions work, right? There's fair and open competitions. Yes, there are certain, business types and stuff that can maybe get a contract, but generally speaking, the average Fed just can't go buy something even if they love it. And so really know who you're talking to, and if your goal is to inform them, that's great, and come with that perspective that you're there to try and inform them, but don't expect to get a sale in that meeting. I guess is kind of would be
that's good. I mean, I appreciate that, and again, I think that comes back to know your audience when your industry coming in, and the role of the agency. All right, so some questions are starting to come in. I promise these were a lot of my riffing. And none of these are meant to trip you up, Alex. So if you're like, can't comment, we get it. But my colleague and pal, Robin Gardner, is saying, asking, Alex, you mentioned helping HHS and other agencies. How are you helping GSA internally on their innovation journey? Other parts. Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. So we're trying to be as collaborative as possible. So we're working with TTS on a number of different projects. One of the first things we did was we met with leadership across GSA and said, listen, if there are technology policy issues where we can be of assistance, please reach out to us. We are happy to work with them. There is another emerging tech office that's more, I think, on the acquisition side of the house at GSA. We shared our best practices, everything from our Trello boards to our taxonomies, anything that we can to help people get up and running. So we are willing to share anything and everything that we have, and just really kind of collaborate. I will work with anyone who will work with me. Sort of the opposite of the Groucho Marx. I won't be a member of any group that would have me as a member. I'm the opposite. I will work with anyone who's willing to work with me. So always collaborative.
Yeah, and a follow-on. No, thank you. That I know that personally. He is, folks. Are there synergies and exchanges with Jacob Parcells Group in the innovation portfolio at TTS? That's a question that just came in.
Yeah, I think we have a standing monthly with them, actually, to go over any policy issues. In fact, I want to shout out to Aiden Feldman's group over in TTS. We met with them, said, listen, what are your policy issues that you're having? Please tell us. And they gave us a list of like 20 issues where they're having policy problems. And we started working on those. I mean, just really appreciate that sort of, if there's a policy problem that's stopping someone at GSA and it's on the emerging tech side of the house, that's great. And we get a mix of those, right? We had one agency contact us and say, we need help figuring out which PDF software to buy. And one section of our organization doesn't like it. It's like, well, that's not really us. That's not emerging tech. You guys can figure that one out. Or, the CIO doesn't like open source. Again, that's not really a policy problem. Our stance is, we're not going to tell an individual agency what to do, but if there's government-wide policy implications for something, and there is a need for guidance, we're happy to work with you. And so we've had a number of agencies reach out. Pre-COVID, we were planning on opening up office hours where agencies could literally just come in, every Tuesday at whatever time, come on in, tell us what policy issues they're having, and then work with them to kind of get them updated and changed.
Yeah, please, chat session. There's some questions coming in. Please feel free to drop some. I said early on into this conversation that, Alex, what stuck with me last night when we were chatting is that the goal is to respond to, adopt, I'm reading my notes here, and bring in the new technologies, right? And that policy barriers, if you have any, call us. You just referenced that. Is it possible for you to maybe talk about a recent case where an agency, and you can leave names and out of it, that actually came and said, hey, we need some help interpreting this? When you hear about a policy barrier and your idea of patch notes, I mean, a policy is usually, that's what it says. Here's how you can interpret it. But, getting something to market or to move that pendulum, do you have any other use cases you can share with, hey, here's a situation that we were able to help rectify or move that pendulum?
Sure. I mean, one that we're working on right now is on deepfake technology. So that is the use of artificial intelligence to kind of change someone's face with someone else's face
Hmm.
in a way that it's not just like a cheesy Photoshop, but looks authentic. It can even be done in video. So that, you can have Pete Tseronis saying things that Pete Tseronis would never say and look like
Yeesh.
he's saying these things.
Yeesh. I don't like
Yeah,
that.
it's some scary stuff. And we've seen it. It was used in an Indian election actually recently. It's certainly on the internet. These sort of things are starting to pop up. And so the government needs to start figuring out how to react to it. And so we worked with the Federal Web Council, which is kind of the web managers across government. And we put out a proposed kind of pre-decisional recommendation that all agencies understand what this technology is and pre-prepare to react to it should it happen, right? Should the Secretary of Energy, give a fake video be created that has them saying something that they would never have said, we need to be kind of prepared for that sort of behavior and to kind of have it pre-canned and ready to go as a response.
Okay.
And we issued kind of recommendations in that. We worked with a number of agencies, including the IC side of the House, to kind of put together recommendations in this space.
All right, here's a question. Thank you for that. What's different about working at GSA than anywhere else you've worked, whether in government or industry?
I mean, everywhere's different. I think that, I've enjoyed energy. I enjoyed census. I enjoyed when I was at nonprofits. I enjoyed being a contractor. I don't think I've ever had a job that I didn't enjoy. Maybe when I was a supermarket. I think I worked at Blockbuster Video. That wasn't really great. Besides that, though, I think every place is unique and enjoyable. I really like GSA. They have a unique mission in terms of kind of government-wide perspective, which I think makes them valuable. I think they've got kind of the attitude that they need to be best in the business in terms of acquisition and contracting and to kind of be an exemplar for the rest of government. I think that's really powerful, and I really enjoy working over at GSA and just great people to work with. But again, everywhere is different. I enjoyed working at every agency, pretty much every job I've ever had. So I'm easy, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I got two more coming in here, and again, these are softballish, but I think this is showing you what folks are wanting to hear. What gets you most excited about your program's future? We're leading into a new fiscal year. There's going to be some transition or not and change, but it's like anything else. What are you most excited about, say, over the next year?
It'll be interesting seeing whether it's, Trump 2.0 or Biden 1.0. It'll be interesting to see kind of what their priorities are. Right now, we're kind of stockpiling all of our recommendations and kind of waiting until after the election or after the administration change to kind of start working with them. We were trying to figure out how we can best be involved in kind of helping anyone who is coming in, because there's going to be new folks either way, how we can best figure out how to help them as effectively as possible. So that is kind of where we are. And we're just looking forward to supporting anyone who's kind of coming into OMB or other agencies.
All right.
We do is kind of provide advice. So we've had people from the Hill reach out to us, can you tell us about blockchain? And we have research already done and recommendations. And so we were able to provide kind of advice and kind of thought leadership to anyone who's kind of asking about different technologies and working for kind of an impartial, right? We're not selling anything. We don't consult and you don't pay us for consulting fees. And so we can kind of provide that kind of impartial assessment of technology. And so we're just standing by ready to help.
Yeah. I think that's needs to be underscored. I mean, GSA is that, a general services administration, experts like Alex across public buildings and government policy and IT, federal acquisition. I mean, what an opportunity to use that resource and all of our industry partners. This is a great question coming in from Andrew. And I know you already went there with quantum, but I think putting on your hat, what's an emerging tech that everyone thinks they understand, but they usually don't have a clue? What comes to mind, my man?
AI is kind of the easy answer to that, right? There's a number of tools that made AI very, very easy to do. I mean, I didn't even know Python, and I banged out a Python machine learning tool for one of my projects, in a couple hours of kind of reading online tutorials, right? Do I understand exactly how a tensor works? I absolutely do not. Was I able to make it work? Yes, I was.
No surprise.
Well, I mean, it's not terribly hard. Follow the online direction, right? It's literally, follow the steps, right? And you can build it. And then so I think that AI is one where I think it's become very easy to build AI. And I think that that is one where not everyone quite understands exactly what its limitations are or how exactly it's working under the hood. But I mean, that's an easy answer for that question. I think AI is one that's notorious for anyone can do it these days.
Well, I appreciate that, but I think the fact that you emphasized you read and you learned and you tried is something that if we did more of, people would be tapping into some of their own genius. Okay, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh, other than my own, I would eventually like to run for political office, I suppose. That is on my eventual future state, I think. So politician.
Wow. All right. That's what wouldn't you like to do? What's something you would not want to do?
I don't want to be a cashier at Blockbuster Video again. No, I don't know. Listen, I've enjoyed almost every job I've ever had. Right? There's always, good things, and as long as it's something, I would suggest this: if you know your job so well that you never have to kind of grow, or you never have to stretch, and it's very, very comfortable, it's time to move on. I went from IT. I was in an HR office for a while. I was in an office of public affairs, and I assure you, when I was in public affairs, I had no clue what was going on for the first 6 months. We're going to have a TikTok meeting. You're like, oh, what now? And it wasn't the TikTok app. It was something. It was a communications type thing. They had different nomenclature, different attitudes. And so I learned a lot from that experience. And in fact, I was over at Census, and for 6 months, I kind of supported social media side of the house from that experience I had in public affairs over at Energy. And I learned a lot from them. And so I would urge people to always be jumping to something new and to learn new skills, especially outside your comfort zone. And so I would urge people to always, if you're comfortable, it's time to move on.
All right. Who are your heroes in real life?
Oh, I've got so many. Yeah, I'm not going to answer that question, I think, at this time.
Roger that. Roger that. Here's a question that just came in too that I think pivots back to perspective. Are there any emerging technologies you've come across that you think do not have a place in government?
No, I don't think there's absolutely none. I will say I think that blockchain in particular has very limited roles. I think there's certain spots where blockchain makes a perfect sense and it is the only logical choice. But I think that a lot of times it's overused when a simpler solution may be available. I think that when, for example, you want to use blockchain with industry supply chain, and it's going to be a private-public partnership between government and industry, and where no one is kind of the trusted authority, I think it may make perfect sense to use blockchain. But I think a lot of other places, a simple database and